This week on NHRA Today. The Funny Car Championship is taken by force at Maple Grove. Keystone's top fuel king is a queen. The Johnsons trade time at the top. And Schultz rockets into the record books. From Summit Racing Equipment in Akron, Ohio, these stories and more on this edition of NHRA Today. Every car on the racetrack is put together with parts gathered from all over America. Because racers haven't the time to push a shopping cart from coast to coast, 80% of them buy their parts from mail-order houses like Summit Racing Equipment here in Akron, Ohio. Just pick up the phone, tell them what you want and how you're going to pay for it, and before you can say, "Sign here, please," it's there on your doorstep, ready for the wrench. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of NHRA Today. I'm Steve Evans. Now, this is the retail side of Summit Racing Equipment, and it's pretty fair size. But there is no way that video camera could capture the overall immenseness of this facility. Picture the Pentagon, only slightly smaller, packed with 80,000 part numbers. Everything from the smallest little hose fitting to a complete dyno-tested performance engine. And around here, they do things a little bit differently than the rest of the industry, and we'll show you a bit of that. And we'll have highlights of the Pioneer Electronics Keystone Nationals held last weekend in Reading. But first of all, free of all shipping and handling charges, no CODs, please. Here's this week's What's Hot. Revell's master model maker, Jerry Flynn, surprised the larger-than-life John Force with a scaled-down rocket to aim at his rival.
I know John likes practical jokes, and so I figured if Cruise creeps up on him at the end of the year, we got him an anti-cruise missile for his attack team to use.
I'm speechless.
You'll never hear those words again. If the rocket isn't propelled at Pedregon, Force might save it for a victory launch at Pomona. Mike Dunn's La Victoria Salsa Top Fuel Dragster is first in the eyes of his sponsor. The condiment company says CC Senor for another 2 years of sponsorship.
Last December, we were searching for a sponsor, didn't have a team, almost closed our doors. Now, signing La Victoria for 2 years for a good deal, we can concentrate our efforts on the things we should be concentrating them on, and that's winning the Winston Championship.
Maple Grove saw the debut of top fueler Tommy Johnson Jr.'s associate sponsorship by Winnebago. And Rusty Glidden premiered a Pro Stock T-Bird, but it had teething problems and didn't qualify. So they'll probably probe for some answers. And that's What's Hot. I mentioned they do things a little differently here at Summit. Well, among their 80,000 mail-order part numbers are Diamond P videos. So they have set up a mini theater right here in the retail store. You can come over and preview a video, see if you want to buy it. I know this tape. That is Drag Racing 92, hosted by yours truly and Dave McClellan. Well, here is Dave with some more recent drag racing action. In fact, last weekend's top fuel report from Reading.
Qualifying at the Pioneer Electronics Keystone Nationals showed the continuing influence of 1987 Winston champion Dick LaHaye. The two-time Maple Grove winner helped Scott Coletta to his 7th #1 qualifying slot of the year, while former LaHaye wrench Jimmy Prock dialed Corey McLenathan into the #3 spot. Another graduate of the LaHaye Nitro College is Tom Cattleman, whose years with LaHaye are showing the way for Pat Dakin.
Tom came on board with us and very impressed with his meticulousness of being on top of everything on this car.
Dakin showed just how competitive he could be by qualifying in the 4s for the second straight event. And in round 1, Pat defeated the McDonald's dragster of Ed McCulloch when the ace left early and fouled. Next in line for Pat was the Jolly Rancher Candies dragster of Shelley Anderson, who had qualified 13th after failing to make the field at the last 4 national events. But Dakin's commercial metal fabricator's car broke before staging, ending his weekend early.
We had calmed it down the first round, and we put everything right back into it this round, so I felt real confident the car was going to run well. It was just one of those things.
After Pat Dakin's misfortune, Shelley Anderson soloed her way into the Final Four, where she met up with Winston points leader Eddie Hill. After losing in the first round at 2 of the last 3 races, Hill had something to prove at Reading. But the Pennzoil Nuclear Banana overpowered the track in the near lane, sending Shelley on to the finals against local hero Mike Dunn in the La Victoria Salsa entry. As darkness fell in the title round, Shelley left first and fought her car away from the center line to become only the 4th woman in history to win a professional category at an NHRA national event.
I couldn't ask for more. My dad and my crew, it's because of them I'm here. I mean, this is great.
Eddie Hill maintains his lead over Kenny Bernstein in the Winston Points chase, with Scott Coletta, Mike Dunn, and Joe Amato rounding out the top 5.
Well, this ought to bring that mail-order catalog to life for you. Millions and millions of dollars in performance and racing parts. How would you like to be loose in here with a shopping basket for about 20 minutes? Stay with us. When we come back, you'll meet Summit's very own Pro Stock superstar and see how he fared in Reading. Pawuk's transporter parked here at Summit? Well, 2 reasons. A, he only lives 15 minutes down the road, and B, Summit is his prime benefactor. In fact, Labor Day weekend, Dave McClelland and myself had the pleasure of co-hosting the Carcraft Magazine All-Star Drag Racing Team Awards. And for the 2nd year in a row, Summit was voted the Pro Stock Pro Mod Sponsor of the Year. Here is Big Mac. He's coming back with a Reading Pro Stock report. After that, we'll talk to Mark in person.
The cooler temperatures at the Pioneer Electronics Keystone Nationals couldn't stop the hot streak of Pro Stock driver Mike Thomas. Since hiring former Pro Stocker Terry Adams at Englishtown, Thomas has qualified for every race.
Terry Adams is my new crew chief about the last 6 races, and we have really got things working good. Everybody gets along well, and the car works well. We moved up in the last 4 races from 16th to 11 in points, and I'd love to get in the top 10 the first year. I think that'd be a good accomplishment.
In round 1, Thomas met up with Bruce Allen, who had qualified his Super Shop Chevy 13th. Mark was a 1/10 of a second slower off the line, but he poured on the Oldsmobile power in the far lane to advance to a 2nd round race with number 5 qualifier Steve Schmidt. At the green, Schmidt's Biola Racing Cutlass had the quicker reaction time by a 1/10, and as Thomas tried to reel him in, he drifted toward the center line and had to lift, sending Schmidt on to the final 4.
We're gaining more confidence. The crew's getting better all the time, but you got to get lucky too.
In the final 4, Steve Schmidt became the latest victim of the all-conquering Cutlass of Warren Johnson. And meeting the professor in the championship round would be his number 1 student, his son Kurt, who held lane choice. The younger Johnson's Long Island Dragway Cutlass was quicker off the line, and Dad's GM Performance Parts Olds in the near lane is not used to playing catch-up. Kurt streaked to the quickest time of the event in scoring his 2nd victory of the year and his first final round win over Dad.
Oh, it was unbelievable. He does have a little bit more power than me. I think the difference on that particular run was the lane.
Warren and Kurt remain 1st and 2nd in the Winston Pro Stock Points race, followed by Scott Jeffrey on Larry Morgan, and Mark Pawuk moves past Bob Glidden for 5th.
Fresh from Reading, there is the 194-mile-an-hour Summit Oldsmobile Pro Stock car. And as advertised, here's its owner-driver, Mark Pawuk. And Mark, your first year with Summit started off with a bang early in the year.
Sure did. We go into the 2nd race of the season and at the Ford Motorcraft Nationals in Phoenix and got us a win for Summit, which we were really honored to do. They're a great group of people, and we've been struggling a little bit since, but I think we're heading back in the right direction, Steve.
You had a great reaction time against Warren Johnson's 2nd round last weekend. I thought you had him for a second.
So did I. I wish you were in my seat sometime. We were way out on Warren, and Warren's power up high is just awesome. And he came around me like I was standing still in high gear, but Dave Butner and the crew's really been working hard, and I think we're going to slowly gain some ground.
Another driver with great reaction times witnessed that final against his dad is Kurt Johnson. And how is he keeping that concentration? Frank Hawley in this week's Fast Fact may have one of the ideas.
As much as 80% of all the information your brain receives comes from just one place, your optic nerve. That means that your vision is responsible for more than 4 times as much information as all of your other senses combined. Well, as you can imagine, that's pretty important to the race car driver. Not only does it tell him how to drive the car and how to handle it going down the racetrack, but it tells him when to leave, that all-important reaction to the starting lights. Well, one theory states that if you could narrow your field of vision, you would better be able to react to that one specific thing you're looking at. In our case, the starting light. Well, there's some drivers that are testing this theory. Here's a conventional helmet with a wide eye opening. Sitting next to it is Kurt Johnson's helmet. As you can see, he's taped up the eye opening and narrowed his field of vision. Well, obviously that will cut down on some distractions in his peripheral vision, but the theory says that if his brain has to analyze less information, it's going to do it quicker, and he'll be able to leave the starting line quicker. Well, like anything to do with the mind, those minute increases in performance are hard to measure, but the theory is a really good one.
Blinders? I can't believe it. If you're going to use horse racing technology, why not on pro stock motorcycle racers? After all, they are the closest things to jockeys we've got in this sport. And boy, did they go to the whip last weekend.
The Winston Pro Stock Bike Championship started the stretch run at the Pioneer Electronics Keystone Nationals. And once again, the top two horses are Dave Schultz and John Myers. Schultz rode his Sunoco Dynatech Suzuki into the points lead 2 weeks earlier at the U.S. Nationals after Myers' Star Racing Suzuki went out in the first round.
We're not getting too wild and celebrating about points lead or championship fantasies or anything like that.
Both riders carved their way through eliminations and once again met in the finals.
The round before, we both ran identical ETs. And I went a 64 and he went a 64, but he had a higher mile per hour, so he gets lane choice.
Dave put John in the unpopular near lane, which may be the reason he fouled for the third straight national event final against Schultz. But Dave is not thinking about the championship just yet.
I promised myself never to do that until somebody comes up and says, man, it's impossible. So I'm still racing one round at a time.
John Smith, Ron Ayers, and Byron Hines round out the top 5 in the Schultz and Myers show.
Pro stock biker Dave Schultz rewrote history when he rode into the record books at Reading. Not only was he first to break the 760 barrier, but he also recorded the fastest speed ever at nearly 182 miles an hour. With typical humility, Dave credits crew chief Greg Cope.
When I'm driving the rig to the races and things like that, he flies in at the very last minute. Like this motor didn't come in until the second day. So Greg's really working hard back at Cope Racing on the engines. I really have to give all the credit for the power to him.
You know, the cornerstone of the mail order business is the catalog. And here at Summit, they publish their catalog every 2 months, and the latest one is only 280 pages. Plus, here's something interesting. They have a newsstand catalog that's kind of a half parts book and half magazine with drag racing editorial coverage. In fact, it's been so successful that early '94, it will spawn a new book called American Drag Racing Magazine, to be published by noted photojournalist John Asher. I know John well. There'll be lots of funny car coverage. We've got some too. Here's Dave's final report.
Funny car eliminations at the Pioneer Electronics Keystone Nationals featured some strong efforts by several low-budget racers, such as Jerry Caminito, an independent who is constantly nipping at the heels of the big dogs.
I just do whatever I can, and I do whatever it takes. And anybody usually comes and wants to work with us, we tell them we do whatever it takes. We don't care how long it takes to get it done, we just do it. See, we don't have the money to offer somebody, $400 or $500 a week and keep them with us. If I was to worry about it, I'd have no hair by now.
Round 1 was a colored clash as Caminito's Blue Thunder Olds took on the fast orange Dodge of number 5 qualifier Whit Bazemore. But Bazemore blazed the tires in the far lane, sending Caminito on to a second round meeting with number 4 qualifier Al Hoffman. At the green, Jerry got the better start, but Hoffman's blower drive services Daytona blew past to take the win in the near lane.
We're on to something right now. Everything's working fine. And it was a very good weekend for us, but we've been coming around, and we hope that we can finish off this year a lot better.
Al Hoffman then defeated the number 1 qualifier Chuck Etchells in the Final Four, which set up the championship round encounter with John Force.
A win by Force would allow him to clinch the Winston Funny Car title, and John's Castrol Olds performed in style with a quicker light, low ET of eliminations, and a record 10th victory of the season.
We really wanted to, not just to win the 10th race, but to win the championship here. I really wanted to win the race. I think that was just the icing on the cake, and my guys worked real hard. They did a great job.
So John Force is your 1993 Winston Funny Car champion. But the battle for second rages on among Cruz Pedregon, Chuck Etchells, and Al Hoffman, with Tom Hoover rounding out the top 5.
The latest news from the world of drag racing.
Last weekend at Maple Grove also saw the Division I Top Alcohol Showdown. In the finals for Top Alcohol Dragster, Cliff Bazzelli in the near lane faced Pennsylvania's own Rich McPhillips, but the finish was determined from the start.
I did my job at the starting line. That's my job to do, but I got to owe it all to my crew and my dad. Without him, it wouldn't all happen, and I'm just ecstatic.
In the showdown for Top Alcohol Funny Car, it was Bob Newberry in the near lane against Ace Manzo, who got bumped by Newberry's 594.
We're real pleased with that 594. We thought we could run that number before. We were shaking the tires earlier in qualifying and earlier in the showdown rounds, but Frank is tough, and I'm sure he had some problems out there.
We have moved into the engine shop here at Summit. Like other companies in their field, they offer motors as complete or as stark as the customer desires. And here I find something very interesting. My gosh, it's alive. Small block Chevrolet engines, even big blocks, are completely reconditioned on a CNC machine for enthusiasts that want to build their own engine, yet get this kind of precision at a much reduced price. And I'll bet some of those blocks were in action at Reading last weekend in the sportsman classes. In fact, here are the sportsman winners. Congratulations, one and all. And here is Bob Fry with his report on the Firestone TNN tournament in Indy.
Husband and wife racing teams are nothing new in drag racing, but at the Division III Firestone TNN ET Racing Tournament, there were 3 husband and wife teams in Pro Bike alone, and 2 were on the host Indianapolis Raceway Park squad. The Taylors, David and Mary, have been racing bikes together for 17 years, while the Arthurs, Vince and Christine, are in their rookie season.
Got tired staying home all the time, and I couldn't get him talked out of going racing, so I had a street 350 Yamaha, and he said, well, come out Saturday night and take it down to strip once. And that was 17 years ago.
If it wasn't for my wife being interested in it like I am, I probably wouldn't be racing today.
My parents drag raced when I was a little child. They drag race cars, so we started thinking about what to race, and it was cheaper to race 2 bikes than 2 cars.
The first time I rode on the track, I went 71 miles an hour. And I said to my husband, I want to go faster. So I was scared at first, but then once I did it one time, I was ready to race.
Christine came to drag racing from motocross, where she never had to worry about racing her husband. Now, like Mary Taylor, it's happened several times.
When I race my husband, I try to just make sure and remember what I'm doing and not get too worked up about who I'm racing.
We've raced each other probably half a dozen times or so, and it's about 50-50 right now.
I would rather race anybody than Mary. She's my toughest competition, really, anytime.
Whenever I do good and whenever I beat him, it reflects on him that he was a good teacher. So it really doesn't bother him. He gets razzed at work because they think it should bother his ego, but he said it doesn't.
Neither family had to race their spouses at this event, but Vince did have to borrow a bike from friend Ricky Smith just to compete with his wife after his ride broke just a few days before the event. The Arthurs were eliminated early, but they were just happy to have qualified for the ET Finals in their first year. Meanwhile, the Taylors showed their expertise as David won the preliminary event, the Race of Champions, on Friday, and went to the bike final against fellow IRP racer Wesley Wells in the far lane. In a close race, David broke out, and Wesley was crowned champion.
We were in the finals 3 times this year, and he was one up on me. I needed to get a win to even it up.
Now here are the rest of the winners from Division III. For NHRA Today, I'm Bob Fry.
Well, I think we all learned something today. The mail order business has definitely gone into a new age, and you can put total confidence in purchasing parts by phone. It can also be the best way to get a good deal, too. Compare the ads back and forth, the National Dragster, call them up, see who can ship the same day. The 800 calls are free. What have you got to lose? Well, we're all out of time, but we'll be back. We'll have a preview of the Sears Craftsman Nationals from Topeka, Division 6 action from beautiful British Columbia, and a profile of Pro Stock veteran Frank Iaconio. For all of us here at NHRA Today, I'm Steve Evans, and we'll see you then.
NHRA Today is a presentation of Diamond P Sports.